Okay, so picture this. November 1999. A man is found shot to death in his Michigan junkyard. The scene is, well, too clean. No weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing. It looks like a robbery gone bad, a case that's almost certainly going to go cold. But then, 700 miles away, another death happens, and it unravels a conspiracy so twisted it could only have been born in the digital age. Let's dive into this incredible story of how a crime with zero physical clues was solved by a trail of invisible evidence.
So, on the surface, you've got these two events that could not seem more disconnected. On one hand, you have the brutal murder of Bruce Miller, a 48-year-old junkyard owner up in Flint, Michigan. And on the other, 3 months later and hundreds of miles away, you have the apparent suicide of Jerry Cassidy, who is actually a former homicide investigator in Kansas City, Missouri. One's a crime scene, the other's a personal tragedy.
And that's the central puzzle, right? This is what stumped investigators. There was absolutely no obvious link between these two men. No shared history, no mutual friends, nothing. So how in the world could you possibly tie a murder victim in Michigan to a suicide in Missouri? Well, the answer wasn't in the physical world at all.
To really understand the breakthrough, we have to go back to the very beginning. Back to that original crime scene and just how bizarre it was for the police who first walked into Bruce Miller's office.
Now this is what's so wild. You'd think a junkyard office would be an investigator's dream for evidence, right? Grease, oil, dust, that stuff captures everything. But this scene had nothing. It was wiped clean. The killer knew exactly what to touch, what not to touch, and how to leave absolutely no trace. It was like a professional hit in the messiest place imaginable.
So you can imagine the case immediately hit a brick wall. I mean, the list of what investigators didn't have was just staggering. No prints, no DNA from the killer, the shotgun used was gone, and not a single person saw a thing. The only clue was about $2,000 missing from Bruce's pocket, which led everyone to think, okay, this was just a tragic, random robbery. The case just sat there, cold, for months.
And it probably would have stayed cold forever, if not for what happened in Missouri. Suddenly, the investigation was about to pivot from the grimy floor of a junkyard to the clean, sterile world of a computer hard drive. Turns out, that was the real crime scene.
So at the scene of Jerry Cassidy's suicide, police found this videotape in the trash. It's a seductive video of a woman, and the label leads them to a name, Cherie. When they find out she's from Flint, Michigan, they make a call. And just like that, Bruce Miller's grieving widow is suddenly right at the center of everything. Of course, when they first confronted her, she denied she even knew a guy named Cassidy.
This case basically became one of the very first major trials to depend almost entirely on this brand new field, computer forensics. You have to remember, at the time, this was really cutting-edge stuff. The idea that you could pull evidence, not from a blood stain, but from the empty space on a hard drive, that was revolutionary. So investigators seized both Cherie's and Jerry's computers, hoping to find the story they were trying to hide.
The whole process is actually fascinating. So first, the experts create a perfect copy, what they call a mirror image. That's absolutely crucial. It means the original evidence is never touched, never tampered with. Then, they use special software to scan everything, especially the parts of the drive that look empty. Because, when you delete a file, the data doesn't just vanish, it often sticks around until something new is saved over it. And in that digital ghost town, they found a gold mine.
What they uncovered was way more than just data. It was like a diary of deception. They were about to read a story written by Cherie Miller herself that laid out step by step exactly how she manipulated a man into becoming her personal hitman. You are not going to believe this. On her computer, investigators pieced together this incredible alternate reality Cherie had built for her online lover, Jerry. This wasn't just simple lying. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. She told him her husband Bruce was a violent mobster. She stole a friend's positive pregnancy test and old sonograms to pretend she was pregnant with Jerry's twins. Then, she used makeup to create fake bruises, sent him pictures, and claimed Bruce had beaten her so badly she miscarried their children. She built this whole world where Jerry Cassidy wasn't a killer, but a hero, a white knight riding in to save his damsel from a monster.
And then they found the smoking gun, a transcript of an instant message conversation saved on Jerry's computer, basically spelling out the murder plot. It starts with Cherie pretending to be terrified, painting herself as the victim, and asking her protector this chillingly practical question.
And Jerry, the former cop, just replies with his cold professional advice. The casualness of it is just terrifying. They're talking about the logistics of murder like they're planning a dinner date. It's a chilling look at how the internet gave them this emotional distance, turning a human being into just a problem to be solved.
And here it is, the final, crucial instruction from Cherie. This wasn't just about covering their tracks. This was about creating a completely false story. Take the wallet, and it looks like a robbery. That one detail was specifically designed to make the murder seem random and send the police on that wild goose chase that lasted for months.
So, when confronted with this, Cherie claimed the entire instant message was a fake. She said Jerry, the spurned lover, had forged it to frame her. And technically, AOL admitted a text file could be edited. So the prosecution had a huge challenge. They had to prove it was real. They had to get justice, not from a witness, but from a hard drive.
To prove she was lying, prosecutors started building a digital cage around her piece by piece. First, AOL server logs proved that both Cherie and Jerry were in fact online and logged into their accounts at the exact time that message was sent. Then, they found out Cherie called AOL to change her personal information twice, once right after the murder, and then again right after Jerry's suicide. I mean, that's a classic sign of someone covering their tracks. And finally, phone records confirmed she was on the phone with her husband when he was shot, just like they planned to make sure he was in his office.
But the defense kept insisting the message itself was forged. The real nail in the coffin, the one thing she absolutely could not explain away, was this tiny, very human error. In the IM chat, Jerry writes that if anything happens to him, Cherie should call a man named John O'Connor, misspelling O'Connor with 2 C's and 2 N's. Well, investigators then found a scrap of paper near Cherie's computer with that exact same name, John O'Connor, misspelled in the exact same way in her own handwriting. It was a digital fingerprint.
A statistician later testified that the odds of 2 people independently making that specific, weird spelling error for that name were 1 in 2 quintillion. That's a 2 with 18 zeros after it. It was, for all practical purposes, statistically impossible for it to be a coincidence. The message was real. The conspiracy was real. Faced with that mountain of digital evidence, the jury saw right through all the lies. Cherie Miller, who never laid a finger on her husband, who was miles away when he died, was convicted of his murder and sentenced to life in prison. She thought just by hitting delete, she could make it all disappear. She was very, very wrong.
This quote from one of the investigators on the case really just says it all. It perfectly captures why this story is so important. Cherie Miller didn't use a gun or a knife as her weapon of choice. She used a keyboard and a mouse. She weaponized lies, seduction, and the anonymity of the internet to turn another person into her puppet. This was a landmark case that proved that a digital trail, no matter how faint you think it is, can be just as damning as a bloody footprint, and it forever changed the way murder is investigated.